Hey everybody, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today, we're looking at an interesting one. We have In dich hab ich gehofft, Herr, which translates to, in you I have placed my hope, Lord. This is a particularly fascinating chorale. There are some chords in here that are just chin scratchers. I don't know what other way to put it because they're just interesting, whether they are diatonic chords or whether they are secondary dominant chords that don't resolve. This is a fascinating chorale for sure. Do forgive the typo as well. A tone that wasn't supposed to made it into the alto line here, but I think everything else should be correct as I am quickly scanning over my digital copy I have in front of me with all my notes on it. But with all that being said, there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want this video to tarry on for too long, so we're just going to hop right into it. So 2 flats into the key signature. We start on B flat, we end on B flat. I reckon we are in the key of B flat, that's for certain. Passing 7th in the bass here before we get G, D, G, and B flat. That is a 6 chord, G minor. I guess you could analyze this as 4/6 as well because we have a passing E flat here, but I hear this as G minor. We then have D, F, A, and F, which I guess could be analyzed as sort of like a B flat major chord in root position, but I'm going to analyze it as D minor, which is our 3 chord. We have a deceptive progression here. I think there's sort of an idea here where we have a chord that could be reinterpreted because of the single passing tone, but I'm going to err on the side of caution here and analyze the chord that's happening on the downbeat and keep it consistent with the passing tone being the one, the non-chord tone. After our 3 chord, we have A, F, C, and F, which is F major over A. That's 5/6. 3 going to 5 is a kind of an unusual progression as well, but not unprecedented. And then we get probably the most, we have a measure filled with, I would say, interesting chords in their own rights, but here we have B flat, G, B flat, and E flat. That's E flat major over B flat. It's a 4/6/4 chord. So we have another deceptive progression. Actually, well, I guess 6 going to 3 is somewhat deceptive because it's going against the grain. It's not the first place you would expect 6 to go, and 3 going to 5 is also somewhat deceptive, but this is truly deceptive in the sense that we have 5 going to a chord that isn't functioning like a tonic. We have a 4/6/4 chord, and even if you look at the notes happening off of the harmonic rhythm and made the argument that this was like a tonic triad with the 7th here, still I do hear this as a 4/6/4 chord with this E flat, B flat, and G happening all here, but I do take it with a grain of salt because it is happening over a pedal, and this B flat feels more significant than the notes sort of above it. So even though it's a 4/6/4 chord, the bass resolution does happen the way you would expect. We have the leading tone going to the tonic. On the downbeat of the next measure, we have B flat, E flat, G, and C, which is C minor 7 over B flat. That is 2/4/3. Here we have a 2/4/3 chord in the wild on its own specific beat. I guess the only argument that would be made to, I guess, weaken the fact that we have like a strong beat, or not even necessarily a strong beat 2/4/3 chord, but a 2/4/3 chord that isn't somehow also happening at the same time as a 4/6 chord, is the fact that we have a pedal in the bass. So it's not all 4 of the voices moving. We have one static voice, but still 2/4/3 without any passing tones going on. That's pretty interesting. And then we have A flat, F, F, and D. This is D diminished over A flat, another 6/4 chord. It's passing, so that's fine. This would be 7/6/4 of 4 because E flat is our 4 chord and D is its leading tone, so 7/6/4 of 4. And then we get G, B flat, and E flat, 4/6. So that is one of the secondary dominants that resolves where we expect it to. This E flat's a chord tone, so we won't mark it. This D is a passing 7th. And then we have F, F, A, and C, which is our 5 chord, F major, passing 7th in the tenor before we cadence. Perfect authentic cadence in the key of B flat major, B flat, D, F, and B flat. Okay, looking ahead, we have a half cadence in the key of B flat, but we briefly visit the key of C minor beforehand. We start things off with E flat, G, and B flat, which does sound like a 1 going to a 4 chord here. So even so, I don't think the B flat is where we start the modulation. I think we start the modulation here on the E flat, and this 4 chord is now our 3, and this is the first of our interesting chords here, because we have like a descending chromatic line here, G, F sharp, and then F natural. What's really interesting about this chord is if we see F sharp in the context of C, we're thinking that it's functioning as a secondary leading tone. It'll just reverse course. It'll go back up to G. But if we only isolate the alto line, we have G, F sharp, and F natural. This F natural could be functioning like a chordal 7th, and this could be a G7 chord, but we don't get a G7 chord, we get a different chord. But starting with the beat that we're on, we have A, E flat, F sharp, and C. This is F sharp diminished over A, or more specifically F sharp fully diminished 7th over A. That would be 7, 6, 5 of 5, and we would expect a 5 chord after that, but instead we get 7, B, D, F, and D, which is 7 in root position. It's interesting. It seems here that Bach is resolving the leading tone chord here to a chord that shares the same function. For all intents and purposes, it's functioning like a 5 chord. 7 chords are dominant, just like 5 chords in terms of their function, but we're missing the root of the chord. And we tend to see wacky chord progressions when we see chromaticism and like passing chromaticism in Bach. So this is one of the wackier progressions, but we're seeing a secondary dominant resolve to a functionally similar chord, but we're missing the root of where we would expect it to go. So very interesting. This isn't the first time we're going to see this, or this isn't the last time, rather. This is the first time we see this. But moving ahead, we are looking for a point on which we're going to modulate back to the key of B flat major. We have E flat, G, E flat, and C, G, E flat, and E flat. That's our tonic triad in root position, C minor, and we have some passing tones in the alto and the bass before we get E flat, G, G, and C, which is C minor in first inversion. So we'll just change the figure bass, and I reckon this is where we modulate back to the key of B flat major. This is our 2-6 chord, but on the other side of this chord, we have something different. So because this is functioning like C minor here on the downbeat, the chord that we have on the other side of the beat is D, B flat, F, and F, which is B flat major in first inversion. Now, if you've watched any of my past videos, you know that 2 going to 1 is kind of an anomaly of a progression. I find that very seldom do we see 2 going to 1 when there is, it's just purely a 2 chord going to another 1 chord. There's always some type of passing tone. There's always some type of something injected into the texture that doesn't make it a pure chord to chord. There's always something contrapuntal or something decorative. And in this case, I think this is another case of Bach using the 2 chord to move to a key. Sometimes he precedes the 2 chord with its dominant, and he's actually kind of doing that. He has the 7 chord here, then we go to the tonic, and then all he's doing is inverting it again. So we're really not getting a chord progression here. We're getting a static series of the same chord, just the bass changes. So if we take a look at this A flat, or this A natural here, we have A, G, C, and E flat, which is A minor 7 flat 5 over E flat, which would be 7, 4, 3. This isn't the first time we've seen a second inversion 7 chord, but I think this is in the same way that Bach has used the 2 and the 7 chord as sort of a hybrid in the past. I think this is another case of him doing that exact same thing, where the 2 chord is being recontextualized as a 7 chord here. If not literally, that's sort of what's being implied by the texture. And this is another case of 2 going to 1 being just muddied by the fact that 7 is in such close proximity. I guess you could make the argument that this is a 2-7 progression, but for the same reason 2 going to 1 is kind of an interesting progression. 2 going to 7 going to 1 is never a progression we see as a byproduct of not subdividing the harmonic rhythm. It's always a subdivision, and it's typically only a result of moving one of the voices, typically a voice that isn't the bass. So it doesn't feel very much like a chord progression. It just feels like one of these chords here, where if you take a look at the passing tone, it could change the quality of the chord, or it could change the root of the chord. It depends on how you look at it. But all in all, I think this is a clever tactic for Bach to take a 2-chord and then repurpose it by reintroducing the idea of dominance and shifting it towards the tonic again, because 2 going to 1 doesn't have a strong sense of developing an idea as a tonic as far as Bach's language is concerned. But all in all, very fascinating section. This isn't even the most interesting chord in the chorale. I think that there are more contenders as the chorale goes on, but very fascinating, chock full of surprises in this chorale. We're definitely getting spoiled with this one. But after our passing tones in the lower voices here, we get B flat, D, F, and G. So it's interesting. It's like we get the idea of a B flat major chord here, B flat, D, F, but we have this G in the melody, which turns this into 6, 6, 5. And then we have some more non-chord tones happening. We have this C right here, this C right here, this E flat here, and this G remains a chord tone. So all of the 3 lower voices are non-chord tones, and indicators going off in my brain that, you know, there's a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm going on right now. And in fact, there is. C, C, E flat, and G is C minor. That's another 2-chord. 6 going to 2 is a normative progression. That's a good sign. And because this is a half cadence, the next leg of that progression is 5, 6, 2, 5, and then we would expect 1 on the other side, but we never get that resolution. But yes, we do end on a 5-chord F major, F, C, A, and F. Okay, looking ahead, we have another half cadence in the key of B flat major. And I don't think we ever leave the key of B flat. We just get some pretty angular chromaticism. We get F sharp and A flat as well, so hints of G minor, hints of C minor as well, but we also get hints of F major as well. Just lots of chromaticism going on, but all of them are sort of secondary dominant or secondary leading tone, some type of contextual tone needed to change the quality of the chord, but we never quite leave the key of B flat major. We start things off with F sharp, C, A, and D, which is D7 over F sharp. That is 5, 6, 5 of 6, because D's are dominant of G, and G is our 6th chord, or our submedian. And then we get G, B flat, G, and D, so we do get our 6th chord with some passing tones in the melody and the tenor. And then we get A flat, A flat, D, F, and F, which is another 7-6-4 chord. Very interesting that we're getting a lot of these 7-6-4 chords, or second inversion 7 chords in general. We see one here. Is this the... I swear we got another one. Oh, right here. We could analyze this as a second inversion 7 chord as well. I talked at length about that though. So A flat, F, F, and... A flat, D. I did it again. A flat, D, F, and F. That is another secondary dominant, 7-6-4 of 4, because D is the leading tone to E flat, and E flat is our subdominant. And we do get that E flat here. So the voice that is the secondary leading tone does resolve, but it's just a passing tone, and the chord that we get after the fact skips a chord, right? We go 7-6 of 4, and then we don't ever get 4 proper, right? We have E, we have A flat, we have F, and we have F, but we never get E flat major. Instead, we get A natural, F, C, and E flat, which is F7 over A, or 5-6-5. So we have 7-6-4 of 4. We never go to 4, but we go directly to 5. Very, very interesting chord progression here. So 7-6-4, I guess one way you could interpret it is that it's functioning as a substitute for 4 itself. It's implying 4, therefore it can substitute it, right? You would expect 4 afterwards, therefore is 4 even necessary? I don't know exactly how strong that is, but I would say really we do get a partial resolution here with D going to E flat, which is the root of the chord that we would expect it to resolve to. But nevertheless, fascinating chord progression. And then things get normative again. We get B flat, F, B flat, and D, which is our tonic triad in root position. B flat major. Passing tones in the outer voices here before we get G, G, D, and B flat. Another 1-6 chord progression. We've seen a couple of these so far, one at the beginning as well. Passing 7th in the bass, passing tone in the melody before we get E natural, B flat, G, and D. This is E minor 7 flat 5 in root position, which is 7/7 with the degree symbol because it's half diminished of 5 because E is the leading tone to 5, and or E is the leading tone to F, and F is our 5 chord. I guess you could make the argument this is 5/6 as well because we have this C as well. C, E, B flat, and G, or I guess even more specifically C7 over E, so 5/6/5. But I'm going to stick with the 7 half diminished. They're both functioning the same way, so it doesn't really matter. And then we have F major, F, A, F, and C, our 5 chord. So we have 2 half cadences, one half cadence that feels very interesting because the tonic of the chord, the root of the chord is in the melody. We have F here, and typically we expect half cadences to have the 5th of the chord in the melody in Bach, so it's very interesting to see this particular chorale have that. So we have a juxtaposition of 2 unlike half cadences. Nevertheless, we have a series of short phrases here. We have one, the next phrase ends in an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of C minor, and we're looking for a point in which we modulate, and I think it happens not immediately, but not too far after the phrase starts. We go from 5 to 1, B flat, F, and D. That's B flat major with a passing 7th in the tenor. And then we have E flat, G, G, and B flat, which is our 4 chord. Lots of 1 going to 4 in the chorales of late, the last couple of episodes, 1 going to 4. Some chorales were pretty much entirely based on 1 going to 4, very modal, very plagal. But I do think this 4 chord is where we modulate. This E flat major chord in the key of C minor is also our mediant in the key of C minor. We have some passing tones in the upper voices, and I'm convinced that this is a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm. We have E flat, G, A natural, and C, which is, we have melodic minor going on here. A, C, E flat, and G would be a 6 chord. It would be minor 7 flat 5, so A minor 7 flat 5 over E flat. Another half diminished chord in second inversion. 3 wants to go to 6, so that's a good sign, and I think this subdivision makes sense because it makes a somewhat normative progression out of an unusual progression, or what I would call a transitive progression, because if we neglected to analyze these 2 notes as changing the quality of the harmonic rhythms chord, we'd be going from 3 to 7, D, F, B natural, and D. Again, another C minor or another fragment or a short section in C minor that does not use the 5 chord. Instead it uses the 7 chord, 7/6. And then we go to C minor, C, G, C, and E flat, which is our tonic triad. So 3 going to 7 would be, like I mentioned, a transitive progression because typically we expect 7 going to 3, but 3 going to 7, you use the same voice leading just in reverse, right? But 3 going to 6, and then 6 going to 7, 3 going to 6 is a normative progression, 6 going to 7 is a sensible progression as well. We see adjacency between 6 and 7 quite frequently in Bach, so these are all good signs. But looking ahead, we do have a perfect authentic cadence, not in the key of B flat major, but E flat major. So E flat's going to be our pivot back to the key of E flat rather than C minor. Both of them are logical, but I don't know. I think I would expect C minor more so, or F major, one of those 2, because C is relative and F is the dominant. But through the subdominant, I guess it's not unprecedented, but it's not my first pick. Maybe my 3rd pick or my 4th pick. But starting things off in this phrase, I do think that we move to E flat immediately from our C minor chord. It's now our 6. And then we get G, G, B flat, and D, which is G minor in root position. It is our 3 chord. It's not the first time we've seen 6 going to 3 in this chorale. We also have a passing 7th in the tenor. It's another transitive progression, so the transitive progressions are not unheard of. We see them with some frequency in Bach. They're not as common as or I feel like my intuition tells me they're not as common as their cycle of falling fifths counterparts, but still all they do is they use the same voice leading and they just approach the dominant from another direction, so it is what it is. After our 3 chord, we have maybe the most interesting chord in the chorale here. Sorry, it just snuck up on me. A flat, E flat, B, and C. So I think there are two possible ways to analyze this chord. The first way is treating this A flat as an accented non-chord tone and analyzing the chord as G, E flat, B flat, and C, which would be another 6 chord in second inversion. So this would be a 6-4-3 chord, C minor 7 over G. But I don't think that's actually what's happening here. I think this B flat is a 9/8 suspension over the bass, and this is instead a 4 chord A flat major in root position with a passing 7th in the bass. However, instead of giving us our resolution with another A flat major chord, well, I guess there's nothing really, the only thing that really changes is the bass, but still the voice resolves the way that we would expect. Whether you analyze this as a 6 chord or whether you analyze this as a 4 chord, they're both functioning in the same way as a predominant chord. So the chord that we get before our perfect authentic cadence is F, F, A flat, and D. We've seen this D diminished chord spelled similarly to this before, like here. D diminished over F is 7/6 in the key of E flat. It's not secondary anymore like we've seen in the past. It's primary because we're in the key of E flat right now, but 4 going to 7 and then consequently going to 1, E flat, B flat, G, and E flat is a normative progression. So whether it's another 7-6-1 progression like 6-7-1 progression like we saw in the previous phrase, or whether this is 4-7-1, I think they're both achieving the same thing. But this B flat sounds very much like a suspension to me, so that's why I chose to analyze this like a 4 chord. But it's a very beautiful moment in the chorale with this whole step between the melody and the alto. It's very distinct. It has the profile. I feel like it's the master's mark in this particular chorale as far as the sound is concerned. But we are moving back to the key of B flat major, and we're going to stay there for the rest of the chorale because we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of the tonic. So starting things off, we have modulation back to B flat. This E flat major chord is our 4 chord, and then we go right back to 1, B flat, F, and D, which is our tonic triad in root position. F, A, F, and C is F major, which is our 5 chord. We have a passing 7th of the alto before we get G, B flat, D, and B flat. Here's a pretty traditional deceptive progression. This is G minor, which is our 6 chord, 5 going to 6, or 5 going to 4, 6, 4, because of the fact that we saw this earlier. We've seen 6 chords contextualized with E flat as a passing tone, so whether you hear this E flat as our root or whether you hear this D as the 5th of the chord, that's entirely up to you. Both 6 and 4-6 function the same way in a deceptive progression, and they're both functioning basically the same way as a passing chord that will eventually arrive at some type of dominant or tonic on the other side. But in this case, we do get a dominant. We get A, C, F, and F, which is our 5 chord in first inversion. Then we have some passing tones in the alto and the bass before we get F, C, A, and F, which is just our 5 chord in root position. We'll just change the figured bass to reflect that. We have a delayed passing 7th here in the melody before we get another one of these F, F sharp, G figures going on. F sharp, C, A, and D. In this case, it's another one of these chords here. D7 over F sharp, which is 5-6-5 of 6 again. So we're hearkening back to a fragment we saw at the beginning of the 3rd phrase. And then that does go where we would, actually this does not go where we would expect. We have a passing 7th in the bass here and a passing tone in the the melody here, but we actually get G, B flat, G, and E flat. I guess you could make the argument that this E flat is an accented non-chord tone, but I reckon this is just another deceptive progression. This is 4-6. So in terms of G minor, saying D major to E flat major is just saying 5 going to 6. So this is just another roundabout way of analyzing a deceptive progression just through secondary means. And the fact that we've seen so many secondary dominants in this particular chorale not resolve where we would expect them to shows that Bach has had an interesting tonal relationship with this particular melody or this particular harmonization of the melody. I don't remember analyzing this particular melody, but if I have, it's because I don't remember, because I might have only analyzed the melody once or twice, unlike some of the other melodies I've analyzed, probably close to a dozen times now, but this title doesn't ring any bells for me. That being said, after this secondary deceptive progression, we have E, B flat, G, and C. This is just a substitute for 2-6-5, which we know Bach loves. This is a C7 over E, which is 5-6-5 of 5. C is the dominant of F, and F is our 5 chord. We then have F, A, F, and C, which is our 5 chord, F major, passing 7th in the alto, and then we get B flat major, B flat, F, D, and B flat, which is our tonic triad and root position, and that's going to be the end of today's analysis. A whirlwind of a chorale today. Lots of fascinating chords, whether they belong to the key or whether they are outside of the key, and we just have an interesting series of chords that are resolutions. I think actually, now that I see it, maybe this A flat chord is the most interesting diatonic chord. But I think this 7-6-4 to 4, 7-6-4 of 4 going to 5 probably takes the cake for the most interesting progression. It's like we don't, he just omits the resolution and just uses the dominant to imply the chord that it's going to go to. It's a very modern thing for him to do, a very hip thing as far as jazz is concerned, actually. But I don't know if you ever came up playing jazz, you'd know the saying that Bach would have been a jazz guy. But with all of that being said, I feel like I talked at length about everything I wanted to talk about, and that is going to be the video. So if you're interested in following me along on this journey to analyze all of the chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to hit the notification icon. Sorry, I forgot what it was called. And you could also like the video if you enjoyed it. It helps me out a ton. I upload a video every day, so you'll be notified of when my daily upload goes live. And I'd love to have you along on the journey. There are hundreds of chorales left to analyze at this point. Very exciting. But that being said, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.